The witness of ancient wisdom is from John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern of that is that to you and me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, to reveal his glory, and his disciples believed in him. The witness of modern wisdom is a poem by Diane Lockward entitled "For the Love of Avocados." I sent him from home hardly more than a child. Years later, he came back loving avocados. In the distant kitchen, where he'd flipped burgers and tossed salads, he'd mastered how to prepare the pear-shaped fruit. He took a knife and plied his way into this thick skin with a bravado and gentleness I'd never seen in him. He nudged the halves apart, grabbed a teaspoon, and carefully eased out the heart, holding it as if it were fragile. He took one half, then the other, of the armadillo-hided fruit and slid his spoon where flesh edged against skin, working it under and around, sparing the edible pulp. An artist working at an easel. He filled the center holes with chopped tomatoes. The broken pieces made whole again, merged into 2 reconstructed hearts, a delicate and rare surgery. My boy, who'd gone away angry and wild, had somehow learned how to unclose what had once been shut tight, how to urge out the stony heart and handle it with care. Beneath the rind, he'd grown as tender and mild as that avocado, its rubies nestled in peridot, our forks slipping into the buttery texture of unfamiliar joy, 2 halves of what we shared. God is still speaking, and we are still listening. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Leslie. Will you pray with me? Mother of all creation, womb of life, she who is faithful, I pray that the words I speak today and the meditations of all our hearts will be acceptable in your sight and edifying to all who hear. For you, O God, are our wisdom and our strength. Amen. Well, good morning. It is a day we celebrate as Thanksgiving Sunday. It is the unofficial beginning of the holiday season and the calm before the storm, the last hurrah before we go full speed ahead into Christmas. For many, Thanksgiving is a time for food and family and showing gratitude for the blessings of the last year. And on this particular Thanksgiving Sunday, I am giving thanks for this past year's worship and the study of this text, the Women's Lectionary for the Whole Church, by Wilda C. Gaffney. which we've been working through over the last 12 months. Can you believe it has been 12 months? Maybe you can. I don't know. Well, this morning I hope to share some reflections about what we've learned over this past year and how we might take some of these lessons with us into this season of gratitude and beyond. As I said, over the past year we've been listening with intention to the voices of women and girls, the divine feminine in our sacred text. Well, today is the conclusion of that study. From the beginning, this was intended not as a women's Bible study for a few folks over there, but a season of listening for the whole church. For as Gaffney writes in the introduction, androcentrism, sexism, and misogyny in the Scriptures, in their translation, in their preaching and liturgical use, hurts men and boys and non-binary children and adults as much as it does women and girls. Exclusively masculine language constructs and reinforces the notion that men are the proper image of God and women are secondary and distant. Many, if not most, women and girls have not heard themselves identified by their gender as and with the divine, and for those who have had that experience, it has been profoundly moving, rare, and even sometimes profoundly disturbing. Which is why I've recommended this book a year ago, and our Tuesday book group took it up, and our Thursday morning Bible study took it up and read all of the assigned readings. Why Nina and I have scoured our hymnal for hymns written by women and for women, about women. Even our Sunday school has lifted up the stories of women and girls from our Scriptures. Every lectionary provides a number of texts or scriptures for the preacher to select, to speak to the particular needs of that congregation on that particular day. Here in the sanctuary on Sunday mornings, we've been focused on at least one of these texts every week over the last 50-plus Sundays, with a few exceptions. I don't need to tell you that it's been quite the journey, with new information and insights, some challenges, and I hope some transformation. If you think back to when we first opened this series, it was Advent of last year. We opened the series not as we often do with Mary and Joseph, but with the story of Abraham and Sarah's slave girl Hagar. We reflected on how the all-seeing God saw her and promised blessing for her and her son Ishmael, a story that is still relevant to our interfaith relations today. We read the stories of Elizabeth and Hannah wrestling with our cultural narratives of barrenness and blessedness. We listen deeply to the story of Mary, and she wrestled with the Annunciation that she would give birth to the Son of God. We wrestled with Gaffney's language of womb slave and the conversation around consent. Now, this is a territory where angels fear to tread, let me tell you. We returned to the Garden of Eden and re-examined what the text actually says about those humans who inhabited that place. And we talked about how women have long borne the blame for original sin. We talked about the many women who go unnamed in our sacred text, only referenced as wife or mother or sister to some other male character. We talked about how the language of patriarchal cultures often erases the existence and experience and contributions of women. We listened to stories rarely spoken from the pulpit of Rahab, a sex worker, of Ruth and Naomi's unconventional relationship, of the daring and dangerous Judith, about the sexual violence committed against Tamar. We learned the names of at least some of David's wives, Milcah and Abigail and Bathsheba. We witnessed the rise and fall of the Davidic kingdom under Bathsheba's son, Solomon. And we listened for the voice of Sophia, wisdom personified, as she calls to all who will listen. We contemplated God as mother hen guarding her chicks under her wings. And we spoke of the Creator as the womb of life, even as we stumbled over God our Father, God our Mother, in the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples to pray. Most recently, I preached a sermon about the Israel-Palestine situation and preached that God is a mother mourning over the loss of her beloved child, an image that can be seen time and again all around our world. It has been quite a journey which taught me to pay attention to the women in our sacred stories, to look for their presence or absence, how they are treated, and the wisdom that they have to share. It taught me to listen for the divine feminine at work in the text of our culture. And taught me to look for and listen to female identifying authors, poets, theologians, and comedians. It exposed me to new voices and liturgies, the Beyonce Mass, and the Barbie movie. It taught me how to notice how male-dominated our hymn book can really be, and to search for music from women with intention. It showed me that the song by the Highwomen and Brandi Carlile, A Crowded Table, is a pretty fantastic anthem for Communion Sunday. And likewise, it taught me to see the many contributions of women in our world with new eyes, and to listen for their stories and experiences. As part of our reflection today, I have a few questions in your bulletin. I hope you will take some time to reflect on this year-long study and what it has meant for you, the things that have appealed to you and maybe the things that have challenged you, to give some time to that reflection. For my part, I give thanks for this study and the way it has changed the way I read our Bible and see our world. Case in point, our reading today from the Gospel of John. This is the story of Jesus' first miracle, or sign, as the author describes it. Typically, all eyes are on Jesus in this story. Yet, probably because of this study, my eyes were immediately drawn to Mary and the role that she played as Jesus' mother in the narrative. We have journeyed with this young woman from her days as a young woman to now her mature life. We've journeyed with her from the angel's announcement that she will give birth to a son and her joyful song of consent, the Magnificat. In fact, we've traveled with her all the way through Jesus' earthly ministry, to the cross and the grave and beyond, to the beginnings of a new movement based on her son's teachings. And today appears as a memory recalled, that moment when Mary's son became the Jesus we know and celebrate. It's the story of a wedding in Cana of Galilee. Now, first of all, the location of this sign and wonder is significant. You see, the Messiah wasn't expected to come from there. The Messiah was expected to come from Bethlehem, near the holy city Jerusalem. That was the center of the Davidic kingdom. That was the expectation of where the Savior would be born, not some backwater like Galilee or Nazareth. Cana was off the map. But the wedding is also of interest. Of course, any wedding is a cause for celebration. But I wonder, whose wedding was this? Whose wedding are we celebrating? All we know is that Jesus and his disciples were invited, that Mary was there. And this has led some scholars to suggest it was possibly the wedding of one of Jesus' sisters. Ah, yes, I remember earlier this year I discovered Jesus had sisters. That was a new piece of learning for me. His unnamed sisters are mentioned in Mark chapter 6, verse 3, and Matthew 13, verse 56. They might be implied elsewhere. Whoever's wedding it was, a wedding is a time for the gathering of family and friends. It's a time to eat, drink, and be merry. Some weddings are multi-day affairs, not unlike the celebrations we're about to enter into with Thanksgiving and Christmas. To make these events happen, so many preparations have to take place. Logistics have to be planned. You can imagine the amount of food and drink that are required. And when the wine starts running low, who is the first to notice? Mom. Mom is paying attention. Mom is the one who's keeping tabs on the snacks and refreshments, who's keeping the grocery list. She's the first to notice and take action, and she tells Jesus, her son, they have no wine. There's an implied, action being required here, yes? What an embarrassment it would be if this celebration was to run out of food or drink. What shame that would take. I had a little taste of this the other day. My middle child was just finishing the soccer season, and we'd volunteered to bring the snacks for the last practice. It was sort of a celebration when all the parents and other siblings were invited to come, and we'd carefully counted how many we would need, and we had cookies and drinks and chips. And as I got there, I realized we didn't have enough. So I had to call Hannah. Can you stop by the store and pick up a little bit more? Because how embarrassing would that be to create this celebration and then not have enough? Not have enough for all the kids. Mary tells Jesus they have no wine, but there is no corner store to run to, no 24-hour grocery. What to do? What to do? She tells Jesus they have no wine. To which Jesus replied, "Woman, what concern is that to you and me?" Now, I don't know or fully understand the customs of that time or place, but I will tell you, if my mother came to me for help and I replied, "Woman, what concern is that to me?" well, let's just say I wouldn't be here today. My mother would have said something like, "Child, I brought you into this world and I can take you out of it." But it's a wedding, and there are other people watching, witnesses. And so I imagine she gave him one of those looks. The look that only a mother can give. I can't even do it. I won't even try. But with an air of motherly patience and wisdom, perhaps some pride, she simply tells the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there, as part of the ritual cleansing ceremony, there are these large vessels, these large clay containers, meant to carry 20 to 30 gallons each. 6 of them. You do the math, it's 120 to 180 gallons. That's a lot of wine. But Jesus tells them to fill the vessels with water all the way up to the brim, tells them to draw some out and sends it to the steward, who, not knowing where it's come from, takes a sip and says, "Wow. Most serve the best wine first. You toast with the fine champagne. You stock the bar with the $2 Chuck and Franzia. But you've saved the best for last." Now, honestly, as the grandson of teetotaling Methodists who would faint at the thought of real wine for communion, I find it hilarious that that's Jesus' first miracle. Turning water into 180 gallons of alcohol. But Jesus did this. This is the first of his signs, his wonders, there in Cana of Galilee. This is the sign that reveals his glory, John says. And I think that's a story that would probably get around. People would hear. They would share. I was thinking about this story, and I was thinking about it through the lens of the women's lectionary, through the lens of Mary's experience. Mary, the mother of Jesus. And it was this miraculous thing, yes, an extraordinary thing that Jesus had done. But it started with her. And the bigger miracle, by far, is the ordinary miracle. The miracle of a mother raising a son to recognize and share his gifts, knowing how to motivate him, cultivating a lasting relationship with him that is big enough to grow as he grows, and wondering at that miracle that takes place every day before her eyes. Which is why I chose that poem, For the Love of Avocados. A mother watching her son grow and change, become their own person, come home capable of both strength and tenderness, knowledge and skill. She wrote, "I sent him from home hardly more than a child. Years later, he came back loving avocados." The boy who'd gone away angry and wild had somehow learned to unclose what had once been shut tight, how to urge out the stony heart and handle it with care. You can feel her pride. You can feel her joy, her wonder. Watching one miracle of transformation after another, from infant to toddler, toddler to child, child to youth, and youth to adult, what an amazing, miraculous journey that is. After the blood, sweat, and tears Mary must have shed, after all that wonder and worry she must have carried in her heart, one day her child is grown and capable of things that she had never imagined. You realize it's all miracle. There's not one miracle, it's all a miracle. After caring for our 3 children while my wife was away for a trip these last 2 weeks, I have a new appreciation for her. All she does to nurture and support our children, our family. A mere 14 days of attending to their needs, wants, and preferences. Wow. Gives me a new appreciation for the mental and physical labor she shoulders each day. I have a new appreciation for my mother, who raised 4 kids mostly on her own while working full-time as a nurse. The feelings of inadequacy that you sometimes feel as a parent, and the hope that you carry for each of your children. I have a new appreciation for my grandmother Betty, the teetotaling Methodist. She helped take care of us when my mother was working so many times. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I've experienced it takes a whole church to raise 3. But my grandmother was that person for us. When my mother couldn't be there, she taught us how to make things, how to create. She prepared good food for us. She was an artist, and she loved to share her love of art with us. And I was thinking about the many holidays that we had shared in her home, how she would host. I was thinking how much work must have gone into that for Grandma Betty. And I was thinking about her tower of pie. Oh, the tower of pie. So off the kitchen, there was a room that was sort of like a pantry/mudroom. That was where you would find, on any holiday, Tupperwares, containers filled with cookies, and this Tupperware stack of probably 5 or 6 pies every holiday. She would can and freeze all of her own fruits and many vegetables. She had a pantry and a root cellar and a freezer full of all kinds of treasures. But she made these pies with pie crusts made from scratch. I don't know if it was lard or shortening. I don't want to know. But they were amazing. They were all different kinds of cherry and pecan or pecan. There was a pumpkin and chocolate mousse. She had many different kinds. She was always thinking about what we would need. She used to make these oatmeal cookies that were chocolate. When my family got to be kind of a health food family, she made them out of carob for us. Bless her heart. It must have taken her days to make all those pies, as well as the other dishes, and prepare the house, making space for everyone. I read an article recently about the cost of women's unpaid labor. All the child care and cleaning and laundry, the food preparation and shopping and household management. It said that if American women earned just minimum wage for all the unpaid work that they do around the house and caring for relatives, they would have made $1.5 trillion last year. For reference, Amazon made only $538 billion last year. If we were to tally up all the hours of labor my grandmother and your grandmother and so many others worked to create those holiday meals, we'd never be able to afford it. Too often we take people closest to us for granted. We don't see their contributions. We don't understand what they carry. As a culture, we especially take for granted the women in our midst. There are two Saturday Night Live sketches that come to mind. One's a Thanksgiving one, and all the guys are on the couch watching football, and the loving wife comes out with Totino pizza rolls for her hungry guys, as well as wings and chips. And another one, it's a story of a mother on Christmas morning where she's the last one who gets everything, and it's Kristen Wiig, just in a chaotic situation where everybody else gets what they wanted, everyone else unwraps their present, and mom is the afterthought. I was thinking about these and the humor that comes there, but it rings true that there are ways that we have neglected those people who we care most about. As we make ready for this holiday season, I hope that you will see all the people, particularly the women whose work sometimes goes unnoticed or uncelebrated in our society. That you'll make an effort to recognize their contributions, to celebrate their labor. The educators and childcare workers, the mail carriers and delivery folks, the grocery and department store clerks, the cooks and cleaners, all of these and more. This morning I give thanks for those who work tirelessly behind the scenes to make our ministry and mission possible here in this church, many of who go unnoticed or unnamed. Thank you. You are a blessing to me and to all of us. We give thanks to God for you. Now, in the coming weeks and months, as we turn towards Advent and Christmas, I know that things are only going to get busier. And for many of you, they've already become busy. And as we tell these perhaps familiar stories, I hope that we will hold on to this awareness that we have learned in this last year. I hope we'll continue to listen for the voices of women and girls, the divine feminine, but all of those who are sometimes pushed to the margins by our culture. This time of study has changed the way I read our Bible, and I hope you will reflect on your journey as well and give thanks. As I close, I want to share a prayer of thanksgiving from Anne Lamott in her book, Help, Thanks, Wow, the 3 essential prayers. I recommend it to you. But she writes, gratitude begins in our hearts and then dovetails into behavior. It almost always makes you willing to be of service, which is where the joy resides. It means that you are willing to stop being such a jerk. When you are aware of all that has been given to you in your lifetime in the past few days, it is hard not to be humbled and pleased to give back. Indeed, in this season, for giving thanks to God and to all who have blessed us with their love and care, I invite you to make one small ritual of thanksgiving, to take that little card amongst all those things we handed to you today and write the name of someone for whom you are grateful. You can keep it with you, or you can add it to the offering plate as it comes by, and we'll find a way to display it this week. But I hope you will take those and maybe other notes of thanks and gratitude, and you will send those to the people who you care about, who you have been blessed by, those people for whom you give thanks. You will make that expression of gratitude to them. Tell them how grateful you are to them. And maybe ask, how can I help? A word of God for the people of God. Let the church say, Amen.